She believed she could destroy me completely, dictate my every action, suppress my professional growth, then gloat over a measly 5-cent increase. However, she ultimately created her own downfall. All it required was a gentle nudge. During the early 2020s, I had recently secured a customer support role at a modest technology firm in the Midwest. The position wasn't particularly prestigious, but I was thankful for the chance. My spouse worked at the same company as well, though in a separate division and at a significantly elevated position. We had consistently maintained rigid workplace professionalism, separating our private lives from business matters. Nevertheless, that approach didn't prevent workplace gossip. One individual specifically seemed to harbor an instant, unexplained hatred toward me, the administrative manager. From day one, I sensed her frigid, examining stare each time I entered the workplace. Initially, I dismissed it, assuming she was naturally stern or perhaps doubtful of recent hires. Yet as weeks passed, it became agonizingly obvious. She had marked me for trouble. This individual, let's refer to her as Lisa, wasn't the original administrative manager. She had begun as a billing representative, but received advancement when the previous manager, the person who had employed me, resigned without warning. It appeared to be quite a leap for someone lacking management background, but she had served the company for an extended period, and the proprietor prioritized dedication above credentials. Despite her animosity, I stayed a perfect worker. My output was flawless. My statistics ranked among the top performers on our team. I maintained punctuality consistently, and client reviews regarding my service were perpetually outstanding. I never provided Lisa any grounds for criticism. Yet she appeared committed to discovering problems with every task I completed. She scrutinized the most minor details. If I reached my workstation 30 seconds behind schedule following a meal break, she would highlight it. If I used the restroom for longer than 3 minutes, she would deliver a subtle hostile comment about stealing company time. When I assisted a colleague with a challenging client, she criticized me for neglecting my own responsibilities. Victory seemed impossible. Initially, I assumed it reflected her character. Perhaps she was excessively thorough, or perhaps she simply disliked customer support employees generally. But then something felt wrong. She managed my colleagues reasonably, including those who had inferior performance than myself. I remained the sole one under her surveillance. Bewildered and irritated, I shared my concerns with my spouse one night. I described the constant monitoring, the fault-finding, and the stress that seemed to intensify whenever Lisa was present. My husband remained silent for a moment, then released a sigh. "There's information you need to hear," he said reluctantly. He then revealed something that made my heart sink. Before we had become a couple, long before I even joined the company, Lisa had attempted to court him. She had shown romantic interest in dating him, but he had politely rejected her. She didn't handle it gracefully, and soon after, she began maintaining her distance from him. Everything became clear now. She wasn't merely a demanding supervisor. She harbored a personal grudge against me. To her, I wasn't simply a worker. I was the individual who possessed what she desired and couldn't obtain. I experienced a combination of fury and incredulity. How could anyone cling to something so trivial for such duration? How could she allow an old rebuff to drive her antagonism toward me in a work environment? It was maddening, yet also pitiful. Still, I had no recourse. I couldn't demonstrate that her unjust behavior was personal, and worse, when I expressed my worries to the company proprietor, he merely dismissed them. "She's served here for years," he stated indifferently. "I'm confident it's merely a miscommunication. Don't interpret it personally." Simple for him to declare. He wasn't the target being methodically undermined daily. I tightened my fists, suppressed my dignity, and resolved to persevere. But I had no understanding that this was merely the start. The instant I observed the job evaluation before me, I recognized something was amiss. The clean, white document on my workspace appeared no different from those my colleagues had received, but I could sense the burden of something malicious pressing against my chest. My heartbeat accelerated as I examined the pages, scanning the precisely worded business language. "Below standards, requires enhancement, demonstrates insufficient drive." What the hell? A nauseating heat blazed in my chest as I compelled myself to continue reading. Every single measurement in that document was an outright falsehood. I had succeeded in every element of my position. Client satisfaction ratings, productivity, issue resolution. There was absolutely no way my work merited this type of assessment. Around me, my colleagues whispered enthusiastically, some beaming as they reviewed their assessments. One after another, they proceeded to Lisa's office to approve their increases. 50 cents, 75 cents, even a complete dollar hourly, a fair compensation for excellent performance. My fingers gripped the paper edges as I reached the concluding page. New hourly salary adjustment, 5 cents. 5 cents. I stared. 5 damn cents. For an extended moment, I simply remained there, clutching the assessment so firmly my knuckles became pale. This wasn't merely an offense. It was a calculated, intentional insult. I could sense Lisa's presence before I spotted her. She hovered just beyond my visual range. Observing me with that identical arrogant expression she consistently displayed when she believed she'd triumphed. Her mouth formed something resembling a sneer before she turned away, strolling back toward her office, as if she had just granted me the honor of sharing her airspace. My anger erupted. I pushed my chair backward and rose suddenly, the legs shrieking against the tile flooring. The office hummed with the sound of my colleagues discussing excitedly about their raises, unaware of the tempest forming within me. I marched toward Lisa's office, gripping my assessment so tightly that the document wrinkled in my hands. I was finished being polite. I didn't knock. Lisa barely looked up from her workspace, taking a slow, calculated sip from her coffee mug before she finally recognized me. "May I assist you?" I slammed the document onto her desk, my tone cutting like a blade. "Explain this." She lifted an eyebrow, glancing down at the assessment with manufactured indifference. "It's your job evaluation." I laughed, the sound harsh and humorless. "Job evaluation? This is a joke, correct? A 5-cent increase? You do understand my statistics are among the strongest in the division." Lisa shrugged, taking another sip of her coffee. "Increases are determined by total contribution, not merely statistics." Total contribution? I stared at her, my pulse throbbing against my temples. "So, let me understand this correctly. I surpass expectations. I receive excellent client reviews, and I outperform most of the team. Yet, I receive an increase that won't even purchase a vending machine snack." Lisa placed her mug down and leaned back in her chair, an infuriatingly pleased expression on her face. "I cannot discuss details of internal assessments, but decisions were made based on what benefits the company. I desired to shout. Instead, I drew a slow breath through my nostrils, my hands forming fists at my sides. "This is vindictive, isn't it?" I questioned, my voice dangerously steady. "You've targeted me since the moment I began, and now you're retaliating against me for something that has zero connection to my performance." Lisa's demeanor wavered just for an instant, a fracture in the facade. Then she grinned, the type of grin that validated every suspicion I'd harbored. "If you're dissatisfied with your increase, you're free to pursue employment elsewhere," she stated smoothly. The statement struck like a blow. I had labored tirelessly for this organization. I had demonstrated my worth here, and she understood it. But she didn't care, because this wasn't concerning my dedication. This wasn't about job performance. This was about her personal resentment, her animosity, her bitterness. I should have anticipated this. I should have realized that individuals like Lisa, petty, insecure, authority-hungry people, flourished on creating others' misery. I inhaled sharply through my nose, forcing myself to remain composed. "This isn't finished," I declared, my voice barely audible. And I meant it. I spun around and departed, my heart racing, my hands trembling. I had never experienced such helplessness. I proceeded directly to the proprietor's office. My hands were still quivering when I sat down, but I controlled my voice. I presented everything. The fault-finding, the unjust monitoring, the reality that my assessment didn't represent my genuine performance. He listened, or at minimum he appeared to. Then, with a weary sigh, he reclined in his chair and stated, "Lisa's served with us extensively. I'm confident it's merely a misunderstanding." I stared at him, barely able to process what I was hearing. "You believe this is a misunderstanding?" I asked, my voice filled with disbelief. "She's intentionally targeting me." The proprietor sighed once more, massaging his temples. "Listen, I understand. You're frustrated, but Lisa has served here for years, and I'm not going to create conflict over a job assessment. If you're dissatisfied, simply maintain focus and continue performing excellent work. Things will balance out." Balance out? I wanted to laugh. Nothing about this was ever going to balance out. I stood slowly, forcing myself to maintain my voice steady. "Thank you for your time," I said flatly, though we both understood his time had been completely wasted. As I exited his office, something within me broke. This organization, this pathetic little technology company, would never transform. Individuals like Lisa would always prevail, because people like the proprietor were too cowardly to stop them. For the first time, I seriously contemplated resigning. I was drained, tired of the manipulation, tired of feeling like regardless of how diligently I worked, it would never suffice. But something restrained me, a sensation, a whisper of something electric beneath my skin. This isn't finished. Not yet. 6 months elapsed. I immersed myself in my work, avoiding Lisa as much as possible. But deep within, the resentment grew. I was biding my time, waiting. And then the upheaval occurred. A mass departure. The general manager and 2 senior employees from my husband's division left to join a rival company. Not long afterward, some of our largest clients followed them. The proprietor, in a frantic attempt to prevent additional losses, initiated an internal inquiry. A handful of employees were dismissed with compensation, while the company attempted to establish whether someone had disclosed information to the competing firm. Lisa was among them. I observed her collect her belongings. Her face, a mask of forced indifference. For the first time since I'd begun working there, she appeared uncertain. And that's when it occurred to me. This was my opportunity. Lisa was absent, at least for the following 2 days, when the company initiated an internal inquiry into the recent departure of key clients. The office was tense, suffocatingly silent. The proprietor had become suspicious, convinced that someone had revealed sensitive business information to our primary competitor. In an attempt to identify the informant, he dismissed several employees with compensation while he executed his investigation. One of them was Lisa. For the first time since I had begun employment at this accursed company, she was nowhere to be found. Her workstation was vacant, her usual sarcastic comments absent from the atmosphere, and her domineering presence missing from our daily activities. And honestly, it was paradise. But as much as I wanted to savor those 2 days of tranquility, a sinister idea entered my mind. Lisa wasn't the type to accept things passively. If she was at home, she was probably seething, devising her next strategy. I didn't need to speculate for long, because within hours, she had made the critical error of providing me the exact weapon I required to annihilate her. That evening, as I was browsing through random websites attempting to distract myself from the chaos at work, something triggered in my memory. An old rumor I had once overheard. Months earlier, one of my colleagues had mentioned that Lisa maintained a blog. At the time, I didn't consider much of it. Many people had personal blogs back in the early 2000s. It was the period of anonymous online complaints, secret digital journals, and platforms where discontented employees could express their frustrations under the illusion of anonymity. But now, I was intrigued. I entered a few keywords into a search engine. It didn't require long before I discovered it, and when I did, my stomach plummeted. The blog was loaded with entry after entry of bitter, resentful, fury-driven rants. She had begun the blog long before I even worked at the company, but as I scrolled through her archives, I witnessed my own narrative developing in real time. She had written about me, not directly. She believed she was being cunning. She had scrambled names, reversed spellings, and referred to the company by a fictitious name. But there was no question about it. I recognized every scenario she described. The employees she insulted, the management decisions she ridiculed, the poisonous hatred she poured onto the page. And then I discovered the incriminating evidence. There it was, in black and white. She had labeled our supervisor an incompetent fool who would likely mess up payroll and end up in prison for tax evasion. She had mocked the company's business approach, laughing about how it was only a matter of time before it crumbled. She had boasted about wanting to get me dismissed, and in case her contempt for me wasn't clear enough, she had composed a particularly malicious, vicious entry dedicated entirely to her most despised colleague. Someone whose name she had reversed, but was so painfully obvious, it might as well have been in bright lights. She labeled me a pathetic sycophant, claimed I wasn't even skilled at my position, and worst of all, she openly admitted that she had sabotaged my job assessment intentionally. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, eyes scanning the words repeatedly. She had ruined herself. I didn't need to do anything. She had already completed all the work for me. But I wasn't going to squander this chance. I captured screenshots of everything. Every single entry, every insult, every admission of wrongdoing. I stored copies on my computer, emailed them to myself, printed them out. Lisa believed she was secure. She believed her blog was anonymous. But she had underestimated me. She had given me the blade, and now I was going to utilize it. I wasn't foolish. If I approached the proprietor immediately, I knew exactly what would happen. He would hesitate. He would attempt to shield her. Lisa had served the company for years. She was part of the infrastructure, a fixture, a permanent stain that nobody had bothered to remove. If I confronted him too forcefully, he might dismiss it, claim it wasn't significant or worse, attempt to cover for her. No, I needed to be calculated. So I waited. The following morning, the office buzzed with anticipation. The employees who had been temporarily suspended were supposed to return later that afternoon. Lisa would enter through those doors completely unaware that her destiny had already been determined. I requested a private meeting with the proprietor. I entered his office with a carefully selected stack of printed blog entries in my hands. I didn't begin with Lisa's personal vendetta against me. That was secondary. Instead, I went straight for his pride. "She's been disclosing damaging information about you," I stated calmly, placing the documents on his desk. "Publicly, online, and if anyone connects this to the company, we could have serious legal problems." His expression darkened as he skimmed through the first few pages. "She said I'd mess up payroll," he muttered, eyes narrowing. "Oh, that's not even the worst of it," I said, turning to a particularly damning entry. "Here's where she suggests that the IRS will pursue you. And here," I pointed to another entry, "she's openly mocking our largest clients." His face turned pale. I let him absorb it, let the weight of it settle in, let him stew in his own paranoia. Then, and only then, did I deliver the final blow. "Oh, and incidentally," I added casually, "she also wrote about me, said she intentionally sabotaged my job assessment." Silence. Then the proprietor exhaled sharply and pushed back his chair. "I need to make a call." Lisa entered the office that afternoon with the confidence of someone who thought they were invulnerable. She had no idea what was approaching. I watched as she strolled to her desk, her usual arrogance radiating from her. She placed her bag down, logged into her computer, and then, "Lisa, in my office." The proprietor's voice sliced through the office like a razor. Every single person stopped what they were doing. Lisa stiffened. Her face flickered with confusion, then irritation. Still, she held her head high as she turned and marched toward his office. The door closed behind her. Silence stretched. Minutes passed. Then a loud, sharp noise. A chair scraping violently against the floor. Lisa's voice raised, panicked. "You can't be serious." Another few minutes. Then the door swung open and Lisa stormed out. Her face was red, her lips pressed into a thin, furious line. She went to her desk, grabbed her belongings in silence, and walked out. She didn't look at me, but I smiled because I had won. The silence in the office was tangible. Every gaze was fixed on Lisa as she stormed from the proprietor's office. Her face ashen, her lips compressed into a furious, quivering line. She moved with stiff, almost robotic movements as she made her way back to her workstation, collecting her belongings with sharp, jerky motions. No one uttered a word. Not a single individual dared to inquire what had occurred, but we all understood. She had been terminated, and I was the cause. I observed as she crammed the last of her possessions into her bag, her hands trembling slightly as she sealed it shut. I half anticipated her to explode, to shriek, to hurl something, but she didn't. Instead, she turned to me. Her eyes blazed with rage and shame, and for the first time since I had known her, she appeared diminished. I simply tilted my head, allowing a slow, satisfied smile to spread across my lips. "Checkmate!" Lisa opened her mouth, perhaps to curse me, perhaps to spit out one last bitter comment. But before she could utter anything, the proprietor's voice echoed through the office. "Lisa, I need you to surrender your company access card before you depart." Her jaw clamped shut. Her fists tightened at her sides. She released a sharp exhale, retrieved her access card from her lanyard, and slammed it onto the closest desk. The sharp thud resonated through the silent office, like the final nail in her coffin. Then, without another word, she pivoted and walked out. As soon as the door swung closed behind her, a hush descended over the office, and then a single cough, a rustle of papers, and then murmurs. People began whispering to each other, the tension finally dissolving as the reality of what had just transpired settled in. Lisa was gone permanently. For the first time since I had joined the company, I felt liberated. The crushing burden that had clung to me for so long, the constant surveillance, the unfair nitpicking, the sensation of being monitored and criticized, was eliminated. Over the following weeks, things at work transformed dramatically. People conversed more, laughed more. No longer did we tread on eggshells, dreading some ridiculous reprimand from Lisa. Even the proprietor seemed different. Maybe it was because he realized how close he had come to catastrophe. After all, if Lisa's blog had become public, it could have severely damaged the company's reputation. Or perhaps, deep down, he had always known Lisa was a problem, but had been too complacent to address her until now. Either way, he began paying closer attention. And me? I flourished. Without Lisa undermining me, my work demonstrated itself. My statistics soared even higher, and 3 months later, I was promoted to management. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lisa had spent so much time attempting to destroy me, and yet, in the end, she had been the designer of her own destruction. And me? I prevailed. One evening, about a month after Lisa had been dismissed, I was sitting at home, casually browsing through the internet, when a familiar blog appeared on my screen. I clicked on it out of curiosity, wondering if she had posted anything about what had occurred. She had. The post was a lengthy, rambling diatribe about how she had been unjustly fired by a company full of fools who didn't value her skills. I chuckled. Skills in what? Workplace toxicity. She never mentioned me by name, of course, but she didn't need to. She blamed a certain colleague for framing her up, claiming that she had been betrayed and that people were conspiring against her. I laughed. She still didn't comprehend it. She still thought she had been the victim in all of this. But it didn't matter anymore, because I had moved forward. And she was still trapped in the past, burning with bitterness over a battle she had already lost. I settled back in my chair, a satisfied smirk forming at the corners of my lips. Lisa had spent so much time attempting to sabotage me. She had gone out of her way to make my life miserable, and in the end, I was the one still standing. I had earned my promotion, my raise, and my peace of mind. And Lisa? She was just another bitter footnote in my story, a cautionary tale of what occurs when you play dirty and lose. The first few days after Lisa's dramatic departure were almost surreal. For the first time in years, I entered work without feeling like I had to prepare myself for combat. No more passive-aggressive comments. No more treading on eggshells waiting for her next power play. She was gone. The office felt brighter, more liberated. People actually smiled more. It was as if we had all unknowingly been holding our breath for years and could finally breathe. And me, I should have felt nothing but triumph. But in the quiet moments when the adrenaline of the conflict had subsided, I found myself sitting alone at my desk, staring at the vacant space where Lisa used to sit, and feeling something unexpected. Not remorse, not guilt, but a strange, lingering thought. Had she ever foreseen this coming? Had she ever, in all her arrogance and cruelty, considered the possibility that one day her reign would end? Or had she truly believed she was invincible? For years, she had dominated over this office, believing she could escape consequences for anything. But karma doesn't forget. Initially, there were rumors. Some said Lisa was attempting to find work in the same industry, but no one would employ her. Word had circulated, as it always does in small professional communities, and her reputation was tainted. Others claimed she had tried to sue the company for unjust termination. But with the mountain of evidence against her, she didn't have a chance. Then came the most ironic part. One afternoon, about 3 months after she had been fired, I received a LinkedIn notification, a connection request from Lisa. I nearly burst out laughing. I clicked on her profile and saw that her job title was empty. Her activity feed was filled with frantic job applications and generic motivational quotes about overcoming challenges. I didn't accept her request. Instead, I just sat there, marveling at the sheer absurdity of it all. The same woman who had spent years attempting to destroy my career was now struggling to salvage her own. It was poetic. And the best part, I didn't have to do anything. She had destroyed herself. Looking back, there was a time when I craved immediate revenge, when she sabotaged my assessment, when she humiliated me in front of my colleagues, when she tried to make me feel insignificant and helpless. I wanted to retaliate right then and there, but if I had acted out of fury, I would have lost. Instead, I waited. I let her excavate her own grave. And when the moment was right, I simply handed her the shovel. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about striking first. It's about allowing karma to do the work for you. Have you ever had a supervisor or colleague who attempted to sabotage you out of envy or malice? If so, how did you handle it? Would you have done what I did? Waited for the perfect moment to strike? Or would you have taken a different approach? Let me know in the comments. Because trust me, stories like this, we all have them. And sometimes the best way to win is to simply outlast your adversaries.